The best thing I can do for you, kind of no matter where you're at in your career, is to actually get you to take the time. And I don't care if it takes a year, but sit down and say, I'm going to become really good at this.
You are now listening to the Creative Juice podcast brought to you by Entrepreneur.io.
What's up, indies? Welcome back to Creative Juice. This is the podcast where we cover growing and monetizing your fan base and building a music career with marketing strategies that we see working every day inside our music marketing agency and across our community of thousands of artists and bands. I hope you enjoy and subscribe. This is episode 362, and I'm your host, Jack McCarthy. And with me, as always, is Circa. Cirque, hello, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you, friend?
I'm great, man. I'm super excited about this episode today. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. We've been talking over probably like the last maybe 8 episodes, kind of going back to foundations of music marketing, talking about strategies that artists need to be paying attention to, and kind of giving our experiences and perspectives on music marketing as a whole, and also sprinkling in some other topics here and there. And today we wanted to bring a little bit back around to growing and scaling as an artist in 2025. And in particular, sort of highlighting some of the needs that we're seeing artists and bands have across the various sectors or services inside of Indepreneur, what we're seeing artists talk about, the things that we're recognizing and how we're sort of addressing them across the various things that we do, to hopefully give you guys a little bit of an idea of how to identify these needs within your own music career, within your own business, the things that you can apply to them based on what we're doing and what we're thinking about. So in the same way that we're trying to help artists grow and scale this year, you can do the same for yourself, whether you're working with us at any level or not. And so we wanted to bring that to the show because I think there's some kind of interesting perspectives there that kind of bring it back to, again, like ground level after we've covered foundations. So I'm excited.
Same. I think it'd be a nice little inside baseball look at how we tend to think about these things.
For sure. Yeah. It'll be a nice sort of tie into what we talked about last week as far as like offers and things like that go, because I definitely will have some interesting looks at the needs that we saw on the agency side. But I'd love to start talking about what we're seeing kind of at the broader community level inside of Indie Pro and the artists that we work with there, as far as how we're helping them to identify the biggest need, maybe the bottleneck, you might even call it, for a lot of artists that are at that stage.
Yeah. When I think about this as the product manager for Indie Pro, it's my job to really look at what is the most common and most prevalent need for the average Indie Pro member. So we kind of got to define a range of what are the different levels of indies that are in Indie Pro. Let's form like a bell curve and try to understand what the thick middle of it is. Where are people at? What do they need to do in their careers? And then try to come up with a policy of what are we trying to communicate? What are we trying to teach you? What are we trying to get you to know and execute on?
That's important. Know and execute.
Yeah. They're not always the same thing. The set of things that we could have you know is not necessarily a set of things that you're likely to execute on.
Right. For sure.
We got to kind of condition it for that. And then we try to work on getting you the things that will help the broadest range of indie pros, which isn't like the widest range, right? It's all independent artists. For the most part, they're not already financially independent on the basis of selling music or doing shows or whatever. Music career is not their only career for the most part. And we're trying to get them there. We're trying to get them to a place where music could be their only career, or at least it gives them what they want out of music.
Right.
And so what I've found, this has changed over the years because we've been doing this is like our 8th year, right? So we've been doing this for a while. And what it was initially for me, what I thought was the best stuff to teach people has changed. Not only because we now have higher tiers of service that can fulfill the needs of those who have, kind of more advanced needs, but also because I've learned a lot about the average indie's journey. I've seen lots of people go through it, learn stuff, try to apply it, and what went wrong, what went right. And so I would say that the meta skill, what's a meta skill? A meta skill is language and writing. If you can talk good and you can write good, you can do tons of other things good.
Right.
Automatically. You don't have to learn additional stuff. You are more prepared to do, for instance, a job interview at pretty much any role if you're very adept at both speaking and writing. So it's a meta skill. Well, we have meta skills in independent artistry and artistry in general. Okay. One meta skill that isn't maybe the most prevalent need for indies is branding. Branding, knowing how to convert the needs of the business into opportunities for marketing and awareness and community building. That's a meta skill. So, if you need to, for instance, register an LLC, but you're able to turn that into something that you could tell your audience and they would find it interesting, well, that's branding. Okay. It's a perfunctory need that you have as a business, but you see it as a marketing opportunity. Well, that's a meta skill. If you can turn everything into a marketing opportunity, that's going to serve you in all areas of your career. Okay. So the major meta skills that most indie pros need, the main need for indie pros is the ability to create music and content quicker. We could really simplify this down as decreasing the amount of time it takes to produce music, finished music that can be released, and content for that music. And when I say content, I do mean short form performance videos and skits and other forms of social media videos, but like videos,
Content for the internet.
Yeah.
Video content for the internet.
Yeah. Chief venue for you getting new attention and fans or entertaining your existing fans is the internet and social media. And the main dialect of the internet and social media today is video. And so knowing how to very quickly create music, because if it takes you forever to create a single, that's not ideal because you don't get many at bats.
Right.
So in all cases, if you can maintain the same level of quality of music or improve it while decreasing the amount of time it takes to get it out, you're doing better. And then if you can also do that for video, you're also doing better. And the reason I say that's a meta skill is because even indies who have a fan base, who don't need to get new attention necessarily, would be benefited by improving that skill.
Yeah.
It could only serve you. And a lot of indies actually have this curse of getting too far ahead without really tightening that up. It's a curse because you get to a point where you're like, I don't need more attention. I have 10,000, 20,000 fans, or I have 1 million monthly listeners. But really, you constantly bump up against inefficiencies in your own business because you think that you have this thing down that you don't really.
Yeah.
And you're constantly going to compensate for that lack and wonder what's going wrong. Is it my sales strategy? Is it I'm not emailing enough? When really the underlying problem is that you do not release content and music on a rapid iterative cycle. So it's like, the best thing I can do for you, kind of no matter where you're at in your career, is to actually get you to take the time. And I don't care if it takes a year, but sit down and say, I'm going to become really good at this. I mean, the creating singles and albums part, we could even just say, we expect that to be good. And let's focus on the video part, because the video part is really the one people don't do.
That's kind of a prerequisite, being able to create music well that sounds good, that people might like if you don't have fans yet,
and not have it take 1,000 years. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and that's kind of always been like a central thesis of Indiepreneur and Indie Pro. If you have good music, then you have a shot at being able to move, past go.
Yeah. But it's like we could help with that. The main point being is that I sound like a broken record with the video thing, with the take 6 months to a year thing, with the, create a content production machine thing. I sound like a broken record because I keep saying it, but people aren't really doing it or paying that much attention to it.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone who gets an Indie Pro wants to run a FSH and start selling products immediately. That's the first thing they think about. And if they do spend any time on content production, it's like they're checking a box. They're like, okay, I ran an ad campaign and I released the single, box checked. Now let's go start making tons of money. And even if you do that successfully, you are really only making it harder on yourself. Even if you check the box and you go run an FSH and it's wildly successful and you get 10,000 customers in the next 6 months and it's profitable. So you're actually making a profit on those customers, even though you don't have anything really out that much. You're really making it harder on yourself, because it would be easier if you hadn't done that to double back, humble yourself, and start focusing on, I'm just going to eat shit and make content for 6 to 12 months until I can do it in my sleep.
You're delaying really hard work.
Yeah.
It's going to approach you. You can't avoid it.
Yeah. 100%. And then, like, beyond that, the most prevalent need is to reduce friction. When I say friction, I mean, let's say you do that. Let's say you get really good at the video production part of it, which, like, I can't really reduce the friction for you. I can't send a video editor or a videographer to your house. You know, I can't force you to plan it. I can make you like templates to plan your shoots and manage your content. Sure, I could do that. And we have done that and are doing that kind of all the time. We're templatizing, making step-by-step instructions, things like that for the production of content. That's helpful. But ultimately, I cannot force you to do this thing. What I can do is reduce the friction that follows it, meaning I can make it easier for you to schedule the content. I can make it easier for you to post and manage the content with some kind of routine or checklist. You know, I can provide training and templates and guides that make it really easy to do that. I can also sort of make those guides something that you can just talk to with your phone and it'll tell you it. That's the type of stuff that we're focused on in development with Indie Pro, is actually making the interface for you to follow a step-by-step guide or learn something that our agency staff already knows how to do in their sleep. Very easy for them to codify it as knowledge for you, and very easy for you to learn it as knowledge from the interface. That's really what we're focused on. But at the end of the day, I cannot force you to take this content thing very seriously. You kind of have to take that leap yourself. I can only shout it from the rooftops every chance I get that you should take 6 to 12 months to get really good at content release and production. You should take 6 to 12 months to get really good at content release and production. Take the 6 to 12 months, guy. Do it now. I put a hold on everything else. I don't plan to make money off of music for the next 6 to 12 months. I have to spend 6 to 12 months getting really good at content production and release. I've accepted that. I'm going to go do it. Here's my month 1 plan. Here's what I plan to transition into. Here are my goals. Let's go. Day 1, Monday, I wake up. Here's what I'm doing. Do it. And if you do it, everything else is easy. The people who struggle with free push shipping and handling, the people who struggle with album launches, the people who struggle with selling tickets for live shows, they would all be able to make very good use out of this greater meta skill that I'm telling you to really dial in. They could all do better if they just did that. They don't have to get better at selling. They don't have to get better at product creation, because it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't matter how poor they are at selling if they had this skill down really well. It would make up for lots of lack in other areas.
Right. Yeah.
And you can get as good at selling as you want. If you can't attract a crowd or maintain attention, you're screwed. It doesn't matter how good at sales you are, because you can only do it on a one-to-one basis. To get flow into the funnel, to get scale, to get lots of people in, you need to be able to grab attention in a noisy environment. And that all is based on content production and release. So that's the prevalent need. That's what we're really optimizing for with all of the things we have in development. It's either about, most of the things we have in development are just about making agency expertise instant to your brain. You can download it to your brain. Beyond that, we need a lot more emphasis on this content production and release thing. So yeah, That's how we're thinking about it at Indie Pro right now. I think we can reduce friction and we can just hammer home this issue. So yeah.
No, I think that's a really good point, and it's a great observation, because if you look at artists that are really doing well, I had somebody ask me the other day, who is an independent artist that you look up to? Who's rising right now? And I was like, oh man, I feel every few years there's an indie that just becomes like the superstar and all the attention goes right to them. And you think about people like La Russell, for example. That was an example that I gave. And when you look at artists like that,
so obvious. So you look at Russell, it's content production and release.
right? Exactly. There's always that common thread of this artist knows how to create great music at a consistent pace and then create content around that music and get it out there and use that to capture the attention of new fans and keep the attention of their existing fans. And then everything else on the back end is serviced by that. It only can process because of that. But we often skip. I feel like it's a temptation to skip all of that and just be like, oh yeah, his music's sick, but look at this. And it's like, no, the music's sick, then look at this.
Yeah.
You can't skip over it.
When we get a client at IndieX that's modern, what's the setup? The setup is they already did the thing I'm telling you is hard and you need to focus on. And then we're just shooting fish in a barrel, dude.
Yeah.
We're just taking like the most basic of marketing tactics, applying it loosely without much tweaking. And it just works. It just works super dumb well, where they're like, oh, we just made 20 grand in a week. And it's, yeah, because you did the part that we're telling people is the hard part already.
Right.
The part we can't do for you.
Right.
We're coming in to do the easy part that just this doesn't click with lots of musicians or music managers to do digital marketing. I don't know why, but they just kind of makes them go cross-eyed. And so we step in and do that part, but they do that hard part.
Well, so much of that is, and I don't want to get too much into a tangent about this because you know how I'll get real passionate and heated about it. But for artists that go into that level where they are pumping out music and content at such a rapid clip that they're getting tons of fans and building a big audiences, there is the streaming, licensing, etc. payout that comes with that. And I think that becomes a bit of a like comfort blanket for the artist and their team that they've built, that they're like, well, this is how you monetize, but they're missing a whole chunk of money that's just being
right. Like they're like, I'm not hungry.
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't, as long as if they were starving, they'd be like, oh shit, we need to market. How do we have all these fans and we're starving? But if they're not, insofar as they're not starving, like they don't know the difference between I'm making 100K a year and I'm making 600K a year until they're making 600K a year.
Exactly. 100%. Yeah, that's such a good observation. I mean, I think if you're an artist and you're hearing what Circa is saying and you're saying to yourself, oh, that sounds like me. Like, I need to be better about getting myself out there and getting my music out there. The only thing you can do is to become an absolute menace at making content around your music. And you need to, and if you can fall in love with the process of doing it, you're going to be so much better off for it. Find a way to do it that it's something that you like. I think that's so important. And I'm really excited for everything on the horizon with Indie Pro about that. What I really love about this, where we're taking this episode, and I hope you guys are picking up on this, is we didn't want this episode to be a big walking advertisement for the things that we do at Indepreneur. It was mostly about what's the need that we're seeing. Let's take our company and the needs that we see because we have access to lots of artists. What are the needs that we're seeing? How can you apply them or understand if they're part of what you have going on? And if they are, what can you do about it? And since we started talking about IndieX and agency, we can jump into that. And I can share a little bit about kind of where we're double clicking right now.
I'm actually very interested to hear this because it's a completely different set of needs. Like there's not a whole lot of overlap here. I'm not hearing what I just said back to me. It's going to be a different set of things. Yeah,
for sure. And I think this is really interesting. We actually just had a series of about 3 weeks, 4 weeks worth of what we were calling retro meetings, which really were, it was me and a couple of the other folks on our agency team looking into over the last year, some of our, what I'll call more ideal fit type clients, people that really were kind of primed and ready to succeed at what we do at the agency, which is typically like e-commerce strategy, tour marketing, digital marketing strategy, but primarily e-commerce and making money online. And what struggles did they have? Where did they not get the result that we wanted them to get, and why? We've spent a lot of time sort of going over data and rehashing information and looking at the reasons that people started with us, and if they stopped working with us, why that was, what their results were like, and kind of what happened to them. And we started to unpack some really interesting insights. And one of them was that we've noticed over the last year in particular that artists that really are focused on wanting to activate their fans more. So you've got a big audience, right? But you're wondering, how do I do more with them? That's a very common thing that when I have conversations with artists and artist managers and they're interested in working with us at the agency, a lot of times the conversation looks like this. I have a lot of fans and I want to really get them engaged. Engagement is a big word. Like, I want to engage my fans. That's kind of a buzzword, but I hear it a lot. And what it actually means when someone is saying it back to me is, I want to find more ways to keep my fans around. And I want to find more ways to provide them with value of some kind, something that they want, ideally in exchange for money, is really what's being said without saying it. And so I hear that very often when I have consultations with artists and their teams. And I heard it a lot last year. And what we noticed was, when we were kind of doing this study, was artists that have more opportunities or more at-bats for making offers to their fans, they make more money. They drive that engagement. Even if we take revenue out of the equation, if they have more opportunities to make offers of any kind, whether they're free offers or paid offers, they drive engagement in terms of fans being activated and excited and doing things with them online, offline, at shows, in their stores, buying stuff, right? So what we really are focused on at the agency is pulling in as many of those opportunities as we can. So talking to as many artists we can is about, what are the big things that you're planning over the next 12 months? What are the small things that you're planning around throughout the next 12 months? And what are you thinking about doing online as it relates to those sort of milestone or tentpole events? And then we fill in the gaps. We look for as many opportunities to drive signups, to drive sales, to make offers, to remake offers. We've talked about this before, the idea of reskinning offers, or taking an offer or a product that we're already selling and selling it in a slightly different way to appeal to a different kind of fan, or get somebody to raise their hand who previously hadn't. These are the sort of things that we're really kind of double clicking on at IndieX, is how do we do more of that? Because the artists that do well are doing more of it, not less of it. And the ones that sort of fall off are the ones who get misaligned. And I can think of a few occasions at the agency where, over time, an artist might start off really like fast and really excited and strong at what they're doing as far as like offer strategy and things like that. And then you get a little complacent, you start to slip away. Maybe you've got a tour going on and it distracts you. Maybe something happens in the business. Maybe you have a team shakeup or a shift, and this changes the dynamic of what you're doing, and it puts some projects on hold. And what happens is, if you start to get out of alignment with that, it kind of erodes at your progress over time. And then you're wondering like, oh, well, I'm not making as much as I was before. Or I'm not getting as many fans activated as I was before. And I don't know why, but I think it's the marketing. When in reality, it is the marketing, but it's just because you got out of alignment and you started doing less instead of doing more. So what we're focused on is doing more of what we know is driving those kind of activations, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes plenty of sense. I mean, it's funny that like part of the job is translating, you know,
Yeah, dude,
translating,
yeah.
translating those stated needs into like, okay, what's actually going on here? What about their problem do they not know how to articulate? And how do we translate that into kind of what we do?
Yeah, it's really funny. I mean, and it so often comes in the form of what I'm hearing you say is this, right?
Yeah.
And then just repeating it back to them, like kind of sales 101.
Yeah, that's great. Well, yeah, I mean, it's definitely a different set of problems that you guys got to solve at the agency than we have to worry about at Indie Pro for sure.
Definitely, yeah. So I would encourage you, if that sounds like it's you, if any of that need of wanting to activate, engage, keep fans, drive revenue, if that sounds like where you are, then I would say the thing that you need to focus on and pay attention to if you want to grow and scale up your marketing and your fan base growth this year, or your revenue growth this year, is again, like, simply look at the big things that you're planning this year, next 12 months. Don't look out 3 months. Don't look out 6 months. I would say look out 12. Be like, what is my year going to look like? And how many things am I planning in my marketing to support each of those things? And then fill it out as much as you can. Be really aggressive about it. That would be my big recommendation there.
Yeah.
Because you can always pare it back, right? Like, you can always be like, all right, this isn't feasible. We're trying to do too much. You can always scale it back. But if you ramp it up first, you're going to get a bunch of good ideas on the table. You're probably going to get some not so good ideas on the table, and then you can trim. And that's instead of doing sort of the bare minimum, which I think is the default state. It's, oh, we're going to just do what we've always done. Instead of doing what you always done, I would recommend go up 200%.
Yeah. I think, in terms of practical use this has for you, the listener listening to this, is like, one, kind of figure out which of these categories that you're in. I would imagine the average listener of this podcast is more towards my side of things. And then start to really try to form an appreciation for why we might have different interpretations for your needs than you. Because, we look at tons of artist careers all day, every day, every week for years. More often we have to deal with a mismatch between the two. Is we have a perspective that's different from you who's in it. And that doesn't mean like totally fade your own interpretation of what your needs are, but try to add a healthy dose of what we see as well. And consider if there's resistance to actually facilitating those needs. Like, for instance, Jack described a mismatch between what a client might say they need to IndieX and what IndieX has to then say, okay, here's what they actually want. And I am identifying a mismatch between what indies think they want coming into Indie Pro and what is actually best for them. Okay, well, analyze that mismatch and ask yourself, if I actually have the same thing where I think I want this thing, analyze, why do I want this thing? Why is it my inclination, for instance, if you're coming into Indie Pro for the first time, why is my inclination to reach for sales right now? Why? Am I desperate for money? Am I too pot committed? Have I spent tons of years and budget trying to make this music thing work, and now I feel like I'm behind?
Right, yeah.
Do I have FOMO because I see other people in my community or other people in the music space succeeding? Try to really analyze the reason for that delta. Why are you in a rush, or why do you feel you want these things if they are truly different than the set of needs that we've communicated here? And try to work through that, because it's as much psychology as it is professional execution, right?
Yeah, for sure. And you know what? This is actually a really good transition to talking about what we've seen at the consulting and coaching level of Indepreneur, because it actually relies totally on that kind of analysis. Something that we see for a lot of artists at Indie Founder, their need is like, I need a point A of my systems and my process, right? And so much of that point A is, I need to analyze where I'm at currently, and I need to look at it critically. So I need to look at my marketing. I need to look at my audience. I need to look at where I think I'm trying to go versus where I might actually need to go. And then I need to build a process and be held accountable to it for making those smaller micro goals and then larger goals and projects happen. And that's exactly what's kind of going on at Indie Founder. So building upon that and then giving people a fast feedback loop as far as the things that we're seeing work and the new systems and sort of frameworks that we're creating over here with our agency clients. That's what we're doing at Indie Founder. It's exactly that kind of analysis, just at sort of like a one-to-one level with our staff. It's really interesting how it's kind of a bit of a bridge, not necessarily between like the services at all, but more so the types of needs and the artists that have them. Because yeah, like you can't do anything without analyzing where you're at, right?
Yeah. I really hope that we can get sort of by like the things that plague indie artists and in terms of indie pro. I hope we find a way to properly sort of really quickly make indies want to gain the skill of content production and release. Because it's something it's kind of like pulling teeth right now, but I'm hoping we find some mechanism by which we can very quickly make the point stick. It's a psychological barrier. And it really screws artists over more than even major record labels, is like their own misinterpretation of sort of what the next step might be.
That's a harsh truth. Like the only thing that's going to screw you harder than a label is your brain.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And it's so important to underline because, and we've talked about this plenty, man, we've talked about this for years. Like once you start to get really great at creating around your music, you'll have assets that you can use in anything. A viral piece of content, even a semi-viral piece of content, can work across all sorts of different campaigns. And if you can pump out lots of them predictably, like you're going to do so well in so many areas. And I honestly can't stress that enough. I guess one thing I would mention on that note, this is a learning from Indie Founder as well, is once you have that, once you do find yourself in a place where creation is flowing, where you do feel like you have a process for making content, videos, promotional materials around your music, and it's resonating with people, don't immediately jump to the next thing. I think that's a temptation that a lot of artists have, and a mistake that I think a lot of them make is they're like, all right, I got it, on to the next thing, when they're like right there. You know what I mean?
Burn it in.
Yeah. Just go the extra mile and it will matter so much.
Yeah, totally. If you've ever practiced like sports, like if you've ever been part of like competitive sports, once you learn how to do something, the drilling of that like particular thing is not over. You don't stop doing it every day. You know, you drill it until it's like easy to do, until it's like automatic, not to where you first are able to pull it off. Totally.
Right. For sure. So yeah, I hope this was a cool episode for you guys. I hope you dug this. I hope that it gives you a bit of an idea of how to analyze your own needs so that you can look at how you can grow this year, just based on some of the things that we're seeing across the company. I hope this is helpful. This was definitely a fun one, Cirque. Thanks for sharing, man.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming up with it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we'll catch you guys next time on Creative Juice. Peace out, Indies.